Yo, what's up, y'all? We out here, and I wanted to recap something that I learned in my or discovered in my daily devotions a couple days ago. I'm reading through this book, Messiah. It's a contemporary adaptation of the book Desire of Ages by Ellen G. White. And I like this contemporary adaptation because the chapters are a lot shorter and it puts it in more plain language, which I like the original as well. I've read through that a couple times. But being able to see it here gives you a different perspective as the writer puts more of a modern flair on the language. And in many cases, the same points can be made even more plain. But because it's written differently, it can inspire you to think about things in a different way. So the chapter that I was looking at is called The Poor and Suffering. And this is talking about kind of a series of sermons and messages that Jesus is giving to his disciples, followers, and those who are listening. And essentially, he gets to this place where he's talking about the kingdom of heaven and the types of people who are going in. Now, contextually, for Israel here, the leaders being the Pharisees, Sadducees, people who had a very high sense of self. They were really intentional and focused on the outward appearance looking a certain way, and yet their hearts were not in the right place, missing out on the practical application of the scriptures and the truths that they had at the expense of putting up this facade for how great that they were, and as a result creating this pretty stark contrast and distinction from the level that they were at as the great and good people and everybody else at the bottom. And Jesus speaks this particular message to cut through all of that. A lot of people look at salvation as something where it's going to be the best of the best, the people who have done X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, those and what it does is it creates this separation and almost like a competition amongst the people at the top to see who can do the most and who can get the most credit. But at the bottom, it creates a sense of despair and a lack of hope because they don't see how they can measure up to those people who are doing so much so well. But again, Jesus speaks this particular message to cut through all of that nonsense and to show us what the gospel, what truth, and what salvation is really all about, the very thing that God calls us here to do. The main text that this chapter was kind of based on is Matthew 7:12, do to others what you would have them do to you. And as a practical principle, I know that we say that often, but really to live that way is different. Humans are so, as a result of sin, we are so selfish. And it's very hard for us to separate the things that we would like other people to do to us based on the way that we treat other people. We want everything done for us when we want, how we want, and we never think how we would want to be treated if we were the ones we were demanding something of in those moments. And if we did, across the board, maybe society would be a little bit brighter and a little bit more inspiring. And there wouldn't be so much competition and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Pushing people down at the expense to lift ourselves up, right? But let me cut to the chase here because there's a lot of things I could say on this, but there are a few particular points that I want to make and highlight from what I read here. Jesus talks about helping the poor, those who are less fortunate. We have the text where he says, that which you've done to the least of these, you have done to me. And this is what it is. Jesus says, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was alone and away from home and you invited me to your house. I was without clothes and you gave me something to wear. I was sick and you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me. Matthew 25, 35, and 36. And what stood out to me about this is you have this idea. Hold on one second. Okay, that's actually a really dope feature. I just paused this video recording so I could pause the music that I was playing because it was distracting me. I love Danny Sogan and I love uh, Japanese lo-fi, but I needed to put it on pause for this. So you have this verse, right? Matthew 25, 35, and 36, where Jesus is describing a type of person that was not looked on in a very high level in that context. He's describing the low of the low, the person who got ignored, especially by the people at the top, fighting for these accolades and this facade of importance and servitude to try to be like first into the kingdom, right? But Jesus is saying, no, if you want to do something for me, do it to these types of people. And these are people that we always have around us, right? And that's even touched on when oh man, what was it? The poor will, you won't always have me with you, but the poor will always be with you. Yes, Mary, when she broke the alabaster jar and used the perfume to clean the feet of Jesus, and Judas says, oh, this money should have been, what a waste. This money should be used for the poor. And he's like, yeah, the poor you will have with you always. In other words, there's always going to be an opportunity to do this thing, the thing that would help people really get into heaven, right? So there's a little bit of a connection there, and I might have to break that down and look at that a little bit more, as opposed to just touching on it here. But I really want to stick on this for now. Point is this: on that judgment day, Jesus doesn't proclaim the great things he has done for humans by giving his life for them. He announces the faithful works of love that humans have done for him. And he does it in the sense of talking about a certain type of people that we should be looking to help and to serve. And the thing is, the context of this is Judgment Day, right? So on a day where in our minds, we think about it from a standpoint of, oh man, right and wrong. Did I do all these things right? Did I avoid all the sins? Did I make any mistakes? Did I confess for everything? We get caught up in that mentality when it comes to Judgment Day. And we miss out on two things: what Jesus has done for us, and two, what we should actually be doing as a result, right? Because now we start living in a life, in a mentality where it's, let me do what I can to assure my own salvation. But Jesus is saying, no, I've done the saving part. That part is already good. Now focus on the serving part. And that to me is the distinction, right? We can either try to continue living lives to save ourselves, or we can live for the service and benefit of others. That's where the difference is. The Pharisees and the people in the society back then, the culture and the religious system, the feeling was that we need to work for our salvation. We need to do these certain things and earn these certain things to make sure that we're right with God. But God was saying, no, it's not about all that. It's about how you're treating this type of people. It's the way that you actually live, not the things that you're doing, and definitely not trying to achieve your own salvation, because you can't do that. But it's in the way that you live and the way that you treat other people. This is what I wrote down as I reflected on that. God took care of the saving so we can focus on the serving. God took care of the saving so that we can focus on the serving. And I love that, because in its simplicity, that's what it is right there. The assurance of faith, like, we all have that. It's a free gift waiting there for us to be accepted. But there's nothing we can do beyond that in terms of our salvation. But how are we going to live in response to that? God already took care of the saving. We can focus on the serving. Are we going to take that gift and realize that, man, I didn't deserve this. Nobody deserves this, but God gave it for me. And how does that make me treat other people in the same boat as me? Not that I'm better than or worse than, but that are in the same boat and same situation as me. We get so caught up looking at the outward status, monetary, material status, or a perceived spiritual importance and hierarchies and stuff like that. But it's not about that. Are we living to serve, knowing that God has already taken care of the saving? I wrote this down as I thought about it more. We spend so much time trying to figure out how to assure our salvation. Stop. God has already done that. And when we try to, we avoid the thing left for us to do. That is, to serve. We are not saved to try to stay saved. We are saved to serve. Man, that it hits deep. We are not saved to try to stay saved. We are saved to serve. I think you get what I'm saying here, but I ask you, can you resonate with this and what you've seen in spiritual circles, to where we acknowledge that Jesus has done something for us amazing by dying on the cross, and that we're saved, but then all the religious form, all the practice of the spirituality really ends up taking the shape of, how can I stay saved? How can I make sure to keep myself saved? As opposed to, now that I've been saved, how can I serve? It's interesting. It's very interesting. It's based on the least of these, because we are the least of these. And again, when we see what Jesus has done for us as the least of these, it should inspire us to go and do the same for other least of these, because we are all the least of these. It says, whenever you helped any of my people here, even the weakest or the poorest, you helped me. And I love what the book said here. We can see Jesus in the faces of each of his children who suffer. And as we help them, it is like helping Jesus personally. And almost immediately as I read that and reflected on it, I thought, yeah, but are we even looking? Because again, in society, in our spiritual culture, the way that we have it set up right now, we don't look at everybody equally. We don't look at all of us as needing the same sacrifice. We put people in tiers. These people are super saved. These people, like, these people are good, and then the rest of us are down here. We're not good, whatever. But it's not about that. Are we able to see Jesus in everybody, and that everybody is in need of the same thing, regardless of these outward statuses and rankings that we put people in? And one of the last things I'll talk about in regard to this chapter, I guess there's a couple other things. I'll finish out and summarize it here. But the next thing that stood out was this: those who worship God without knowing him, never contacted by Christian missionaries, will not be lost. It's a big question that people have sometimes, and it's based on this thought that if I'm the Christian and the one who is saved, then I have to do X, Y, and Z to make the other person have a chance to be saved. This is where our misinterpretation of "go ye therefore and teach all nations" and what that's all about. Because it is about teaching the things that God told us to do. But oftentimes when we think about that, we go straight to like commandments, we go to outward life adjustment and change, and we don't think about what God commanded in terms of doing these to the least of these. Visiting those who are in prison, giving something to wear to the naked, giving something to drink to the thirsty, giving food to the hungry. We don't think about those things. We often think about the things that match with our perception of what it is to be a high status Christian, right? I hope you understand what I'm saying here. I think I'm making sense. In other words, it's not about us, because God has already done the saving. It comes back to that key thought. It says they may have been ignorant about God's written laws, but the Holy Spirit has touched their hearts, and it shows in their actions. That's the difference. Once again, we look at, let's bring it back. We think about Judgment Day, and we look at it in the sense of right and wrong, and have I done all these things right, and have I avoided all the wrong things? And Jesus is saying, through the way that he shared these things with the people here, that that's part of it, but it's not the thing. Because I've already done the saving. Stop trying to keep yourself saved. I've already saved you. Focus on how you can serve. It's in the way that you live. That's the important thing. And people can live in a way that identifies with Jesus, regardless of what they know. I love that. It really opens things up. It says they may be surprised to hear it, but they are God's children. They don't even know this, but they are, because of how they are living and because of how they are serving other people. Because of something that they feel, something that they have, whether they know it or not, they're living in a way that is serving others and helping other people to realize, wait a second, I matter too. That's what Jesus did by coming down here to sacrifice himself for us, to show you that you matter too. There's a big discrepancy there. I've been talking about this hierarchy. It doesn't get any higher than heaven. But Jesus, from that standpoint, said, no, I'm going to come down here and be one of them, because all of us are the least of these, as I said before. And if we can picture that and understand that, and that's how we go and decide to live our lives in service, that's how we flip the script. That's how we change the game up. says, unselfish workers are among God's most precious treasures. There was another quote on the next page. It says, every day of your life, I was near you in the person of these needy ones, but you didn't look for me. And this is what Jesus says to the people, like, I don't know you. The ones who show up saying, oh, but we did all this stuff in your name. Okay, cool. But what about these people? What about everybody who needed to receive a message of goodness and salvation that you overlooked? If you didn't do it to the least of these, I don't know you. Last couple quotes here. Many people travel to the Holy Land to see the places where Jesus lived and worked and did his miracles. But we don't need to go to Nazareth or Jerusalem to walk in the steps of Jesus. We can find his footprints beside hospital beds, in homeless shelters, in inner city ghettos, in every place where human hearts need help and hope. That's the key. In every place where human hearts need help and hope. It isn't about setting ourselves up to save ourselves or to stay saved so that we don't need to continue feeling the need for help, or trying to assure ourselves of being above the need for the hope. It's about realizing that everyone everywhere needs hope, that everyone everywhere needs help, and that if I've received this gift from God that saves me, I need to share it, and I need to serve other people so that they can see that they can be saved as well, saved to serve. And it becomes a cyclical thing, right? Not saved to save, not saved to stay saved, but saved to serve. Last one, to make all of us children of one family, the King of Heaven became one of us, as we talked about. When we love the world as he does, then his mission will be accomplished, and we will be ready for heaven because heaven will already be in our hearts. And that's what it comes down to. Back then in that time, the people who pretended to be the closest to God couldn't have been further away from it. There wasn't any place for them in heaven because there wasn't any of the true sense of heaven in their hearts. That same question and that same dilemma is brought before us today. How will we respond? Are we gonna try to live in such a way that we think by doing these things to make sure we're checking all the boxes of what's right and what's wrong, that we're already there, but as a result, we're missing out on the very thing that would stamp your ticket, so to speak, of eligibility to make it in? Are we living here in a way that really shows that we value the truth and the gospel and the message, and are grateful in such a way that it calls us to service? Or am I going to try to stay focused on saving myself and spend my life doing something or trying to do something that God's already done for me and missing out on the thing I should be doing, which is serving? That's what it comes down to. So, yeah. What's our answer going to be in the last days? I don't know. What's your answer going to be today? How can we reflect on what we hear this chapter saying and adjust the way that we approach life and the way that we choose to live? Can we stop trying to stay saved when God already saved us? And can we live to serve other people? Can we get out of our own heads and stop being so focused on ourselves and that checkbox? Again, we got to get away from that. And can we start seeing other people for who they are, which is the exact same way that we all should be seeing, like we should be one of them as well, because we're all the least of these. How can I adjust my mentality to say, let me serve them because I'm grateful for how God has served and saved me? But yeah, let me know what you think of that. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. Catch you next one. Peace.